All right, guys. Our next guest is one of the most exciting welterweights in the world. He's one of Bellator's biggest signings and is set to make his company debut at the ultra-stacked Bellator 180, where he faces Douglas Lima for the Bellator welterweight title. Straight out of Riverside, he's the Monsoon. Lorenz Larkin, welcome to Submission Radio. How's it going today?
Man, it's going good. How about you guys?
It's going great, and thanks for coming on the program. It's good to have you on the show for the first time. Finally, we got Lorenz Larkin on the program, and before we talk Bellator 180, we were watching a video from a couple of weeks back of you teaching Nikki Benz and Brittany Amber some MMA techniques. What was it like teaching a couple of porn stars some moves?
That was pretty crazy, man. They're pretty cool, though. They're real down to earth, and everything worked out good. I wasn't too embarrassed.
The video was actually a lot of fun, and the girls seemed really nice. You taught them a lot of moves. You taught them the teep kick. You taught them a whole bunch of things. The big question: did they teach you some moves afterwards from their profession?
No. They didn't. I think it was just the MMA for that segment.
Well, yeah, that's all right, because you never know when they're going to use your moves in their movies anyway. There could be a Lorenz Larkin style porn video that's dedicated to you if you become Bellator champion, and then you're going to see some of your techniques being played out by the girls. So not all is lost. Let's talk about Bellator 180. You've mentioned before that you were surprised that you got offered the title shot in your debut fight. Take us back to that moment. Where were you, and how did you find out you'd finally be getting a shot at a world title?
Oh, man. Okay, so I was coming back from eating my ass off, to tell you the truth. I had like this I had this big-ass breakfast, dude, and I was just on my way home feeling like a food coma, and then my phone rings, and it says Scott on there, so I was like, oh, shit. You know, when you get a call from him, you already know that it's something good, you know, so I was like, all right. And then, yeah, he was just like, well, you ready to fight? You know, any fighter is always like, yeah. Doesn't matter if he's like 80 pounds over his weight limit. He's just like, yeah. You know, everybody says, yeah. So I was like, yeah, I'm ready. What's going on? He was like, okay, how about Madison Square Garden on June 24th against Douglas Lima? And I was like, what the fuck? You know, I was like, what? You mean for the title? And he was like, yeah. For the title, man, right out the gate. And that was it, man. I was hoping he wasn't even expecting a yes from me. I would hope he already knew I was gonna say yeah.
Yeah, he didn't have to wait for the thinking. How long did it take to sort of set in? What did you do? You're there in your food coma state. You just had a delicious breakfast. What did that do for your day? When did it sort of sink in? Like, holy shit, I'm gonna be fighting for the world title.
I guess the next day. The next day I was working real hard right off the bat to get that food out of me. But no, man, I don't know. It still hasn't really kicked in yet, you know. I'm pretty sure when I get out there, get adjusted, and fight week starts coming up, you know, that's when it's really going to hit me. But right now, you know, I'm just still cruising and still going about my daily routines and training hard.
Yeah, and I mean, the fact that it's at Madison Square Garden doesn't hurt either. And I mean, you've had a storied career where you started as a heavyweight, then light heavyweight, then moved down to 185 at the end of your Strikeforce run. You had some tough losses when you moved over to the UFC, but then you found your stride when you moved down to welterweight. Given the lack of promotion from the company, did you ever question if it would ever happen and wonder if you would ever get a fight to actually go for a world title?
You know what, man? I would, you know, you always hope so, but, you know, I just go off of actions, you know, and none of the actions were happening, you know, and I felt like, you know, I don't know, man. I couldn't really even tell you still to this day, you know, I really don't know what was the whole deal with everything and why I wasn't promoted and why they want to give me a big fight, you know what I mean, or just anything, but who cares? I don't now.
You've moved on and now you are fighting for a world title, so that's what matters. It's been a few months since you've signed with Bellator. What's the vibe been like for you so far? I mean, obviously you haven't fought there yet, but have you been able to compare it all to the UFC?
Well, I mean, let's see. I'm pretty sure these past 2 months, I've been marketed more than I have been my whole career.
Wow.
You know, in UFC. So, I mean, that just speaks in itself. You know what I mean? I haven't even fought yet, and just the marketing that I've been seeing already is it's ridiculous.
We were talking about, obviously, and everybody's talking about the big situation between Demetrius Johnson and the UFC at the moment. Demetrius unhappy. He feels like he hasn't been promoted. He feels like his relationship with the UFC has been an unhealthy one, even though he's been champion for a long time. When you see these things pop up, now that you're out of the UFC, what's the kind of advice that you can give to a lot of these fighters who are still in the UFC who are going through these kinds of turmoils?
You know, it's at the end of the day, you know, it's their career, you know, and if they choose to take it by the horns and do what they need to do, then that's what they need to do. That's the whole thing about this MMA sport that we're in. You know, it's either, not only is it a sport where you have to perform in the cage, but you also have to perform outside of the cage, you know, and have all your stuff together. And, to know that what people have the best interest for you and where your career is going to go, and the best just in general for you. You know, you can't just depend on your performances anymore, because, you know, you see that gets you. You know, I think I read something where he doesn't even have pay-per-view points. You know, and we're talking about, you know, and Demetrius Johnson is right now is my favorite fighter of all time. You know, and you know, it's just ridiculous. You know, to me, he is the pound for pound best, period. Not just because he's a little guy doesn't mean shit. You know, he is the pound for pound best fighter I've ever seen in my life. You know what I mean? And you know, I was all into Anderson and everything, and I like John Jones, and I like all the top guys. But as far as a guy that I've seen that all around game is tight, it's Demetrius Johnson. You know what I mean? And he doesn't get the credit that he deserves, or he probably doesn't get the money he deserves.
It's a crazy situation. Demetrius Johnson, of all people, you know, he's a fighter's fighter, so it's not surprising that a guy like yourself, you know, looks up to him a lot. We spoke to Ryan Bader recently, who's also fighting on the card with you. He's mentioned numerous times that he sort of feels re-energized and excited again when it comes to MMA. And, you know, has this change and move over to Bellator sort of had the same effect on you, where you're more excited about MMA than you've been in a while, maybe?
Yeah, it excites me just for the simple fact that, you know, I know I'm in a new position, and I know that the people that I work for are behind me too. You know, it's a whole different feeling when, you know, I guess it would kind of be like you working for years and years and years and never getting Employee of the Month. You know, so every day it's the same old, you know, and then when you get, you know, the next work days are like, you feel energized, you know what I mean? You feel like you're getting recognition for stuff, you know what I mean? So that's the position I'm in, you know. I guess I'm probably the same feeling. I feel rejuvenated. I feel excited that, you know, people are behind me now and people believe in me.
And I mean, you were in Strikeforce before, but when you look at the two people, Scott Coker and Dana White, and you look at the relationships that you had with both of them, what do you think is the big difference between dealing with Scott or Dana back when you were in the UFC and now that you're in Bellator?
The thing is weird because I never really talked with Dana like that about business. So, you know, I don't know. I guess the whole thing that really buckles down is, you know, I talked with Scott about business, you know, and we've had conversations and did stuff like that. And I've never did that with Dana, you know what I mean? So I guess you would say my relationship with Scott is a little different than it is with Dana, you know, because I've dealt with different people when it came to my career and stuff like that when it came to the UFC. And, you know, when I come into Bellator talking about my career, you know, I'm talking straight with Coker, you know?
And one of the things that sort of makes Bellator different from the UFC is obviously the way that they try and market each fighter as an individual character. We see it, with their intros, their walkouts, the promos, the on-screen packages that play during walkouts. Do you like that kind of stuff? And was that important for you being, to be marketed more as an individual rather than just, another guy in a sort of generic uniform?
Yeah, I always, made my thing about, I was doing it. I'm pretty sure, a lot of people, even me, I've always expressed it about feeling like a robot in those uniforms. There's just no originality, it doesn't, the personality of the fighter or anything like that doesn't really come out of what they like to wear and stuff like that. But, especially coming from, I'm a public school kid, so I got to wear, whatever I want to school. So I don't know. I just never conformed, really liked the whole uniform concept about all that. And I like the whole, and what fighter wouldn't like his own intro and, and stuff like that. It's just taking the time out for every fighter. Like, it is about the promotion, but there is no promotion without the fighters. You know what I mean? Just like there isn't no football without the players.
We saw with Rory MacDonald, he had this cool custom video package when he entered where they created this hybrid of a gorilla mix with a lion. Do you think you'll have any specific requests or kind of creative input when it comes to your presentation?
He had what? What did he have? That was when he fought? I didn't see it.
It was like this video, because I think like a gorilla is kind of like his thing, but it's kind of like a lion is also his thing. So they kind of made this hybrid of like a gorilla lion, and it was like roaring, and it was part of his video package. So I'm wondering if you're going to have any sort of crazy things like that that you request from Scott, like, hey, put something on the big screen. What would you request?
That dude needs to figure out what fucking animal he wants to be.
Maybe
I am. What the hell is that? I guess. I don't know, but I promise you, it will not be no cross species type video going on with me.
I'm wondering.
I don't know.
We remember when you paid homage to the Ultimate Warrior prior to your fight against Costa Philippou. You had the mask and the arm tassels. We've actually got the image in front of us. Were you a big WWE guy growing up?
Yeah, I was. Well, I was, WWF. But
yeah,
I was, at that whole stage, I was real big into Ultimate Warrior. I want to just say, man, that was probably my favorite, man. It was Ultimate Warrior. He was the shit.
Yeah, no, he a lot of people love the Ultimate Warrior, and it's so sad how he passed away a day after he got inducted into the Hall of Fame. But I'm wondering, if you get an opportunity at Bellator, would you ever recreate any other of your favorites, I suppose, from the 90s or 80s when it comes to pro wrestling? Is there anything else that you got in your back pocket that people need to watch out for at a possible weigh-in?
Oh, man, I don't know. Who knows? My
Undertaker, a Sting.
I know, man. I might just have what's his name? Paul Bear. He might just come out. Who knows? I might just call out somebody and just crawl out of the cage, out of the bottom of the cage, man. Who knows?
Yeah, and I feel like Bellator is the kind of place where they'd allow that, or you come down from the rafters like Sting, perhaps. So that'd be good to see. Lorenz, we'll talk about your fight against Doug Lima in just a moment, but we mentioned Rory a second. Did you watch his fight against Paul Daly? And just curious, what did you think of his performance? Because he seems like the guy that might be next in line for a title shot.
You know what, man? I seen the fight. His performance was good. And it was really good, but I just wish that I guess a more game Paul would have came, or more game Daly. I wish I would have seen something more than somebody that just got ran through. You know what I mean? When I feel like he could have done better. You know what I mean? I was going for Rory to win, but I just wish that he could have done a little bit better than what I've seen.
And as Casper mentioned, it does kind of look like he'll be the next guy in line to fight the champion. How would you feel about him being your first title defense? Is he a guy that you've always sort of wanted an opportunity to fight in the UFC?
Yeah, I will always have my eyes, on the top guys, and I'll be more than happy to for him to be my first title defense, and especially to shut all the talk of how he's gonna take my health or whatever corny shit he said.
Yeah, I mean, he's beaten current champion in like Tyron Woodley, and he's then the #1 contender in Damian Maia. What do you think that would say about you if you were to beat him and, obviously shut him up with all the things that he's saying?
Well, I guess it would say that he won't take my health. And sorry guys, I can't get it over how corny that shit was. I don't know if he came up with that or he read it on the teleprompter, but I don't know, man. It would just it'll feel good, man. Probably feel a little better, just to really shut him up or shut up that teleprompter so he never has to read it a day in his life again.
Do you think you'll talk to him about this hybrid mix of a gorilla and lion if you guys ever do fight? Do you think you'll bring that up with him if you guys ever do a press conference? Sort of ask him what the deal behind that is?
Well, we'll see, man, because that's the thing, man. Usually I don't really talk shit about potential opponents or anything like that. I'm pretty respectful, man, my whole career. So when I hear him talk about he's gonna take my fucking health and all this other shit, so I'm anxious to see. I hope he doesn't change that up. I hope he keeps that same attitude, when we do have our press conference or whatever, So I hope he keeps that up so I get to say all the stuff that I want to say, especially about his walkout. Now after I get off look it up on YouTube.
You've got, we feel bad because we're giving you ammo now, but do you take that sort of personally? Because you're right, like you're not a guy that talks trash when you face off with fighters. You look away because it's sort of like a respect thing. Is this sort of the most fired up you've ever been about towards an opponent?
It's kind of getting there, man. Because I didn't even know he did that, until I almost like said something to his fan, and I was like gonna be the biggest dick ever because I thought this fan was talking mess because he was like, Rory's gonna take your health, laugh out loud. And then I was like, what? And I was gonna write back, like okay, yeah, we'll see. And then a couple more came through, just like a bunch of emojis like he's gonna take your health. And then I was like, what the hell is everybody talking about? Because where I watched the fights at, it was like a bar, so I couldn't hear him talking after. You know what I mean? Yeah. I just watched the fight, and so then when I finally seen it, I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And I was like, "How corny was that? Like, who says that?"
Well, another big change for you going into this fight will be that for the first time in a long time, you won't have to wear Reebok. How do you feel about that? And were you looking forward to being able to wear your own clothing and having your own sponsors? Yeah,
it's freedom, man. I get to choose who goes on me. You know what I mean? It's I don't have to have somebody tell me what goes on me. So that's just a big deal in its own self. I get to wear what I like. You know what I mean? It's not, for me, it's not all about the money. You know what I mean? It's about what I never want to be in a situation where I wear something that I wouldn't wear outside of the cage. You know what I mean? So my sponsors are going to be something that I'm really involved with, inside the cage and outside of the cage.
Do you mind if we ask, Lorenz? Because obviously there are sort of mixed feedback as far as what the sponsor market is like. Some people say that it kind of dried up after the Reebok came in. A lot of the brands that sponsored MMA fighters kind of went away. What's the landscape like, and how much can you stand to make in your Bellator debut? We're always from the sponsorship. We're always curious about how that sort of translates.
We'll see. I'm dealing with a lot of people that haven't really dealt with MMA before. So, I'm anxious and excited to be working with some of these new people. So, we'll see when everything finalizes, but I know most of my sponsors are going to be people that probably never even sponsored an MMA athlete before.
Well, after your last fight against Neil Magny, you mentioned how you didn't feel any pressure because you were flying under the radar. You weren't high up in the rankings, and there wasn't much of an emphasis placed on your fight. This time, you're fighting for the belt in your debut. You're on the pay-per-view card. It's Madison Square Garden. How do you feel about that? Is there? I suppose there'd be quite a bit extra pressure having the extra spotlight on you how does that kind of affect you? Do you feel any effect over it? And knowing that Bellator is investing so much in your debut?
No, man, still no pressure. I think I'm going to feel more pressure when I defend the belt. You know what I mean? Then right now I just feel like he has all the pressure. I'm the UFC guy coming over, and, everybody's like, show him, what you're all about. That it's all that type of talk. You know what I mean? So right now, I don't feel the pressure. I just feel like it's just another fight. I'm pretty sure when I get the belt, then I'll have some pressure on me, because then I'm going to have something that people want, but he has what everybody wants, not me.
And Lorenz, we really appreciate the time you're giving us. We'll let you go in just a moment. Just a couple more questions. Just talk to us about him as an opponent. You face a lot of incredibly tough guys across heaps of weight classes. How does he sort of compare to your past opponent stylistically? Do you think he presents anything new? And how would you see this fight playing out?
The thing is with him, man, is the good thing I feel about this fight is he's not going to show me anything I haven't seen before. You know what I mean? And, he's just tough, and that's hard in itself. There's not too many, I know it's weird to say that in MMA, but there's not a lot of tough guys, you know what I mean? There's a lot of fighters. There's a lot of tough guys, but, he's tough and he's champion for a reason, and he has a lot of skill to him. And, but the only thing is, I fought a lot of guys like him in the past. I fought heavy punchers. I fought guys with good stand-up, you know what I mean? I fought guys with good jits, so it's nothing that I don't think I've seen. His style is something that I've seen before.
Well, let us ask you this. We saw you told Luke Thomas that after the fight in New York that, assuming you go out there, you win, great performance, you are the new champion, that you'd like to have a big 2-pound supersized Snickers or Reese's. Have there been any advancements in that department, Lorenz? Have the movers and shakers there been made aware?
Oh, yeah, man. They already know. I have a special room for me, and it's going to be a go, you know what I mean? It's right after the fight. I'm getting escorted, see the doctor, right from the doctor. I've already have it in my contract that I get a personal escort to this back room. I cannot give you the details of where this room is located, but it will be fully stacked, and it will be all that for sure. There'll be a room full of diabetes in that room for sure.
I love it. A secret room in Madison Square Garden full of treats. That sounds pretty impressive. Now, before we let you go, Lorenz, let's get the official prediction for you. How do you see yourself beating Douglas Lima to become the new Bellator welterweight champion?
Man, I'm not sure round, but I do know that it's going to be one of those rounds where somebody's going to start shutting down and the pain will start coming for sure. It'll be a total tide change for sure.
All right, well there you go. We can't wait to see it. The matchup is Lorenz Larkin versus Douglas Lima, Bellator 180, June 24th, Madison Square Garden in New York. Follow the man on Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat at @_monsoon. Lorenz, we're happy to see you finally being promoted the way you deserve, and happy to see you in this title position. So we can't wait to watch it. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, and we really appreciate it.
All right, thanks, guys. I appreciate your time too.